After two fantastic X-Men films, X-Men and X2, X-Men United, we then had the lackluster X-Men Last Stand, followed by the awful Wolverine Origins. Then X-Men came back strong with X-Men First Class and dipped again a bit with the Wolverine, a film that on my watch, if you watched my last video, I quite enjoyed as part of the whole universe, but the film does have pacing issues, etc. But now we jump to 2014, and teased at the end of the Wolverine was Magneto and Professor X coming together and enlisting the help of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and that brought us to Days of Future Past. And here I am revisiting that and reviewing it for you. So let's get into this one. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my X-Men Revisit review series. A film series that, generates a bit of hate, I think, a bit of dislike. But what's it like going back and watching these films in quick succession, which is exactly what I'm doing. I've never done that before with this film series, and I'm thoroughly enjoying myself through the highs and through the lows. But with highs, is that what we get here with 2014's Days of Future Past? Let's delve into that. So this film here, it was released on May the 22nd of 2014. Runtime 12A and a rating of 12A. Runtime of 2012 minutes. Where's my head at? This film had a budget of $200 million, and it was a spectacle. That money was there on screen and went on to take worldwide $746 million. A huge take. It had a critics' consensus of 90% over on the aggregate site Rotten Tomatoes. What's that worth now? I don't know. And an audience score of 91%. Bryan Singer returned to the director's chair after directing Superman Returns. That film failed for him, didn't it? And Warner Bros. Didn't want to proceed with any more of those. So he was back in the director's chair. Matthew Vaughn, who directed First Class, is on board as a writer, along with Jan Goldman and Simon Kinberg. And this saw the combination of both X-Men franchises, the old and the new, the young and the old, coming together to give us a story set across multiple time periods. Patrick Stewart and James McAvoy return as Charles Xavier. Ian McKellen, Michael Fassbender as Eric Lenscher. Magneto, they're joined by Hugh Jackman, Jennifer Lawrence, Halle Berry, Nicholas Hoult, Elliot, formerly Ellen Page, Peter Dinklage as Trask, Shawn Ashmore, and we have other X-Men characters that we haven't seen before thrown into the fray, like Bishop, Blink, which was a relatively new character at the time, Sunspot, and we do get Colossus yet again. So this film here, Days of Future Past, I remember it coming out. I remember going to cinema to seeing it. Now, I wasn't too happy at the time that this film came out. I mean, it was a great idea putting together the two time frames, the two lots of X-Men, but I felt that the First Class people should have still had another solo adventure of their own before we delved into a crossover film of the two. It kind of felt like to me that they wanted to take away from X-Men First Class and go back to the old. And for me, I wasn't too happy with that decision. That was before seeing the film, obviously. So I went in to see the film, and this film is based upon a classic story of the same name, Days of Future Past. A Terminator-esque story of time travel, of giant robots that in the future, humanity and the people with the X gene have been wiped out. They're close to the point of extinction. That these Sentinel robots have essentially become sentient, and they've gone against their programming to a degree, in that not only are they killing people who are who carry the X gene, mutants, they're actually identifying the gene in people that would lead to them giving birth to children who would become mutants, and they're wiping them out as well. So the world is on the brink of this Terminator-esque, and we do get an opening where we are given this Terminator-esque kind of landscape, and it's very much influenced by James Cameron's future vision of Earth, of under the war of the machines. And we have a small band of X-Men that every time they're captured, they see it coming, and they sort of reposition themselves, and they this is how they're trying to survive. But other people have other plans. Magneto, Professor X, Wolverine, they come into the fray to help out, and they know that Kitty Pryde has this ability to send people back a couple of weeks, no further than that, but they want to send someone back into the past, back into the 70s to 60s, 70s, to change the future, to stop an occurrence from happening. And this occurrence has Mystique killing the character of Trask, played by Peter Dinklage, and they need to go and stop that. So it's up to Hugh Jackman. He's the only one who can survive this process, because he has the ability of healing himself as he goes. He stands up and says, I will do this, I will go. So he goes back, and his consciousness gets sent back into his own body, back in the past, in the 70s. Magneto is locked away underneath the Pentagon, and they need to go and rescue him after he gets together with Charles Xavier. Young Charles Xavier, is walking again, but he's walking because his mind powers are used to make him walk, and he isn't using them for the other things that he can. And he's essentially withdrawn himself from the world after the events of First Class. And he's at his school, which is now overgrown, run down, so to speak, with Nicholas Holt's Beast. And essentially, it's an analogy for being a drug addict. This is what he's done. He's relying on this drug to take that helps him keep his stuff up, his mind powers at bay, and focus them on him being able to walk and this sort of a thing. It's a trade-off, one for the other. But it's done very much like he's a heroin addict. That's what it kind of thematically leads into. But they get him, and they have to go and rescue Eric Lenchner from the Pentagon, way down deep within the Pentagon, and they enlist the help of Quicksilver. Another character that is in this film, and a fantastic scene. But this whole film plays out like this, that they're there. You've got Magneto. He decides that he wants to kill Mystique, because that's his way of stopping this future from happening, is by taking her out of the equation. And where all these characters were joined at the beginning, they then fracture and depart. Magneto has his own ideas of how to stop things. Professor X has his own ideas of how to stop things. And this is all playing against the backdrop of this stuff happening in the future, where these Sentinels are hunting and tracking these down, and they come to find them, and they've got to stop. They've got to stop these Sentinels. They've got to keep themselves safe until Wolverine can do what he has to do in the past. And that's the story for this film. And a great film it is. Bryan Singer back on directing duties. Forget Bryan Singer and his, pervy little past and what he got up to, right? Disgusting, absolutely. But he's a decent director, and it's great that he's come back into the fray, and we are given a visually stunning, interesting, character driven special effects extravaganza of a movie with some strong characterization, strong themes, in all wrapped up in a nice bow, in what is obviously one of the highlights of the X-Men franchise. how everything in this film pretty much works. Okay, there's a lot of characters in it that are underutilized, and we're talking about characters like Bishop and Blink and Sunspot. They're there for different reasons, just for the action set pieces and no characterization whatsoever. But again, you've got a magnificent story, you've got magnificent stuff between the friendship between Professor Xavier and sorry, Magneto, Eric Lynchner. Oh my Jesus Christ. Anyway, so you got magnificent friendship and not hatred, but you know how they want the same things, but they're on a different side of the table to get in it, and it leads to great conflict between the two of them. But painful to watch, painful for these characters, because they really do care for one another. They really do love one another. And we see this in the future stuff where they've come together to fight this necessary evil that has had to join forces. And even Magneto said what we could have accomplished if we didn't spend all them years fighting. It was a waste of time. And this is what this series does strong, you know. These characters are fantastic. They're rich, they're diverse. And this film, without exception, is probably one of the better X-Men films. Like I said, it's got a great musical score. It's visually stunning. It's a very interesting story. Is it the best X-Men film, though? I think we'll have to find that out in a ranking that I will do at the end of all these movies when I get to them. Now, after the release of this film, we did later on get what is called X-Men Days of Future Past, the Rogue Cut, which is a different cut of this movie that puts the characters played by Anna Paquin back into the movie. And that's a movie that I will delve into in this series. However, it's not going to be yet. I'm going to sort of do it as an addendum at the very end. I'll get through the X-Men films as they came, and at the end I will revisit X-Men Days of Future Past with the Rogue Cut and give you my thoughts on that. And we'll talk about why the X-Men decided to drop the character of Rogue. Why in the first film she was such a pivotal part of the story, but then she was just kind of vanished and forgotten about. Why is that? We'll find that one out. But yeah, so this film ends. It does end with stuff being reset. Now, like I said in my review for the Wolverine, at the end of the Wolverine, you have Professor Xavier and Magneto together in an airport scene with Hugh Jackman. And the question on your lips is, how come Professor Xavier is back if he has died in the movie The Last Stand? The answer lies in this film and the wibbly-wobbly time travel of it all. Because in this film, time gets reset. That stuff didn't happen. Days of Future Past, prevented Last Stand from happening, and the timeline kind of reset, and characters that were killed off, Cyclops, Jean Grey, they're back alive, and no one has a memory of that older timeline than Wolverine himself. So these characters, that stuff never happened to them. So whether on a rewatch for you that kind of dismisses those films and says, there's no point watching them now because they never happened. They never happened. You could look at that scene at the end of the Wolverine as we already know that he has completed this mission, and so he's changed. It's paradoxical, shall we say? It's yeah. And the other question of this film is, in the Wolverine, Wolverine lost his adamantium that was on his claws. A lot of his adamantium was sucked out of him, but in this film we see him with adamantium claws again. How did you get adamantium claws back? Now, this was never answered in the film at all, but however, we can be led to believe that Magneto, using his powers, managed to give Wolverine a adamantium skeleton back, or adamantium claws back. Yeah, that's how that sort of happened, but they do sort of just go over it, just skim over it without really saying anything. So this film ends completely with with a tease of the next film to come. And we're in ancient Egypt, where we see an individual, blue-coloured, building the pyramids, using telekinesis to build the pyramids himself. And as the camera pans around, we see 4 horsemen of the apocalypse on the horizon, leading into the X-Men film Apocalypse, which is a solely first-class movie, if that makes sense. That younger cast of individuals. Yeah, and that's the one that I will be talking about next in a week's time when I get to that one. But yeah, so it's a shame that the timeline's been reset with this film. Everything's hunky-dory, but we never really see these characters again and move on from here, with the exception of Wolverine in Logan, which will also come as well. So anyway, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this film down in the comments down below. You like it? You hate it? Is this your favourite X-Men movie? I'm sure it is for a lot of people. But like my question, where will it rank for me? We'll find that out in time at the end when all is said and done. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you on the next one. Apocalypse.